Welcome, everybody, to the Mindstate Marketing Hour with Will Leach. I'm Steve Brown, your host, and guess what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about one of the best books that you could read, Marketing to Mind States. And Will, you wrote this book on how to use science to connect with your clients. And today we're going to talk about how to expand your creativity and strategic thinking with digital detoxing. Say that 3 times.
I know we got to get some practice on that. Yes, we are. Not only, we think about Mindstate marketing around client engagement, but behavioral psychology can do many other things. And one of the things you can do as a business owner is trying to clear your mind for strategic thinking. So I'm going to tell you about an experience. Why? First, I want to tell you why I think it's important for you to do it and show you some research behind it. Then I want to tell you about my experience, and then teach you guys out there a little bit about how do you maintain some habits to keep your mind kind of constantly, iterating, constantly thinking about new creative ideas, things like that. So I will be doing a bit of lesson development today, actually, there, Steve.
So, Will, what inspired you that made this the topic of today's, when we could have talked about so many different things? Was something going on personally that convicted you? You needed to detox?
You know what? It was, it kind of was. And what it was I had a Facebook, when you get these memories, on Facebook, these memories pop up. And a memory came up where I was in Paris, France. And in that memory, it reminded me, I don't know if you knew this, I was very close to selling my company to a French-based firm a couple of years ago. And I'll tell you, basically the high level story on that was that I was very close to selling. And with that, I would have sold the content and the rights to Mindstate, the book, everything. And at the time, I was really excited about it. It wasn't just for the money. I mean, I loved the group, great company. But it was through this experience of just before I signed the paperwork, so they brought me out to France with the family. They wined and dined us. We were getting close to everything, and after all the due diligence and everything else, I was very close to signing paperwork. I was probably like 2 weeks away, and it was going to change my life, right? Change my life. You know how that is. And of all people, my lawyer, you know how lawyers are, but my lawyer actually said, Will, I didn't know you really wanted to do this. He basically said, are you sure you want to do this? So he stopped things. He goes, I think you should take a weekend, because he looked at the contract, the real details. So no longer was it kind of just a letter. It was more of the details. And through that process, I realized that I was very clouded in my thinking. I was very, very short-sighted. And it was this idea of, oh my gosh. And I backed out, right? So I have the company. So I backed out, and it was through that experience that I remember thinking, I've got to start thinking about the long-term 10, 15, 20-year horizon versus the 3 years that I was thinking about in terms of getting a nice payout, but also these things I really wanted to accomplish with this new company. And I was close to losing everything, the things that I'm passionate about. My life as a father, I was going to be traveling the world a lot more, 40 employees, all of a sudden, big responsibilities. And I was about to give up all the things that I love in life around my business, my own business. And it was through that thing I said, man, I've got to do something different. And then I was introduced by my business coach to a digital detox. And that in many ways, I'll tell you about this biggest decision I ever made with that after coming out of a digital detox. But when he described that, I thought, you know what? I need long-term visioning. And I need to have a structured approach to doing it, not just sitting down and go, okay, from 9 to 5 on this day, I'm going to think strategically. We all do that as small business owners. I need something bigger than that. And that's what a digital detox does for you. So
you were recognizing that distraction was clouding your vision, but right. It's like, we all go through this. We have to make decisions. And so you're saying that by backing out for a little bit, it helped you to get clarity. What you envisioned something that made you interested, and then you realized that it wasn't what you were envisioning. What happened?
Yeah. So, just think of it this way, right? And research tells you that you make about 35,000 decisions on every day. Now that's collective decisions. And, I know that there's some work out of Cornell that says you've made over 225 decisions just on food. So if you're a small business owner, imagine all the short-term decisions you're making every single day. And because you're so distracted, because you're so into the day-to-day, that forces you to only focus on those things that you can control today. And it just narrows your focus on short term, whether that's 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, for me, maybe whatever. So when that whole thing happened to me, where it was because I was so ingrained into the proposition at hand, which was selling the company and becoming a part of a bigger company and all that kind of stuff, that when it basically came to mind that my lawyer, of all people, we're not close. I mean, he just kind of knew me a little bit. He just said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because I didn't think this was the type of guy you were, because he was talking about the number of hours and the travel. That scared me, Steve, because I thought, man, I didn't see it myself. My wife, she wasn't saying anything about it, but she kind of had concerns. But I kept telling her, "Oh, we're going to be so much better off in a couple of years. I get to live my new fantasy, my new life, everything else." And it was my lawyer. And when that happened, when somebody who I barely knew basically forced me to stop and think about who I am as a person, that's when it scared me. And that's why I said, I need to do something more than just visioning sessions every so often that, the books will tell you to go off and do, So that really was the impetus of at least trying to figure out, how do I make this more of a habit in my life? And that's why I talked to my business coach, Steve August, and he introduced me to this idea of going digital detoxing and making that a part of your kind of daily, or maybe, at least certainly your monthly routine.
So give us some ways that we would recognize maybe we're not thinking about how distraction is killing the vision for our business.
Yeah. I think that's a hard question, right? Because the problem with this stuff is, so there's this cognitive bias out there called hyperbolic discounting. But for you guys, just imagine this. We tend to value things more in the present than we do in the future. Meaning that's why when you win the lottery, so many people go, "I want my money right now." Why? Because the value of a big lump sum of money now feels more, immediate. The rewards are immediate versus in the future. So you are designed to focus more on the immediate needs. You just are. So it's very difficult to know whether or not you need to focus on the external. What it was for me was, like I said, a random moment that happened to me. So I didn't recognize that I was doing that, so it wasn't until I almost made a big mistake. I think for you, and thinking about it, is you got to do something to where you are putting something in your calendar or some amount of time somewhere in your calendar that says focus on goals. Now, I do things on Sunday nights to look at my weekly goals for sure, but I don't think that's really what we're even talking about either, right? But at least when I look at my goals, I can also see my 1 year goals, and that's my personal goals as well as my business goals. But I don't know if many people will really recognize it, because you are designed not to. Your mind is designed to focus on the immediate. And even if you do focus on the long term, the value, the emotions are often in the short term, because you can feel those. You can feel a check coming in. You can't feel how your life's going to be 10 years from now. So that's why it makes it so difficult, unfortunately.
So do you have remorse from that decision, or it was like you have total peace about it?
Total peace about it, because I knew after I made the decision, it was the hardest decision I made as a business, because I was close, Steve. I mean, I was close. And I had that email that I sent I just sat there with my, the finger over the button, like, are you really going to do it? Because it's life-changing money. I wasn't going to be a multi-100 million, but it was life-changing money. Like, family could not worry about going to college. I could pay off a house kind of money, right? So it's life-changing. It was very, very difficult. No remorse, because I grounded myself and I was able to really focus on the long-term potential that I had. Now, I didn't know what that potential was, but when I came out of my digital detox, I came out of that with a vision. So when I almost got bought, I realized that I wasn't focused on a vision. But the next thing I was like, okay, so I almost gave up something that was really precious to me. Now, how am I going to go focus on something that was very precious to me, my family, as well as my Mindstate, the book, the whole thing that I'm doing with Mindstate now? That's when I got clarity on that. The digital detox gave me clarity on that. And that now, a year and a half later, I have a whole new business up and running. I have multiple streams of business going on because of that. I didn't have that foresight back a year and a half ago. It took a digital detox for me to, and I'll tell you how it worked, to expand my thinking and then hone in my thinking afterwards. And it has to do with nature, actually, which is a really cool thing about it.
So I think that many of us, we get a business going and we have some wins and these things fall into our lap, and we haven't really sat down and done a very deliberate path that we want to go because we're not sure yet. And so this happened at a point where you didn't have a real defined path. You hadn't sat down and really gone through the planning, strategy, identification, etc., because you hadn't done this detoxing thing. There were a lot of distractions keeping you from this process.
Yeah. And not only that, Steve, so research will tell you that when you are constantly stressed, or let's just call it, I would suggest to you that the more distractions you have in your life, the more things going on, the more times you're looking at social media, the more kind of input that's hitting you, that leads to stress. Stress in your life, research tells you, leads to, for a lot of people, it's correlated anyways, with rumination, meaning that the more stressed you are, the more likely you are as a person, as a business owner, to start thinking about negative parts of yourself. So when you're stressed out, you have greater senses of rumination. And when you're ruminating, you start blaming yourself for things that were not under your control. And so when you have higher rumination, then of course, you begin to increase mental illness. Actually, when people have constant negative thoughts about themselves, it actually creates greater anxiety. It increases depression, things like that. So it's kind of like a weird cycle, and you got to make sure you don't catch yourself into that. So just from the distraction, and you think to yourself, no, I'm just checking my Facebook. And, I just came out of research. No lie, Steve. I just came out of research last week, and we were just a standard question. Tell me about how many hours you're on social media. And I'm not kidding you. And maybe this feels very normal to most people out there. Most people were saying they're on social media, not TV, just social media of some amount, on the average 25 hours a week. 25 hours a week. I wouldn't have thought that, but a couple people felt bad about it. Other people were like, no, now maybe that's their entertainment. But imagine the amount of distraction you have with social media. You go down these, you watch, you get something and you go into Facebook or you go into Instagram or whatever, and then you go down these rabbit holes, and all that stress is actually creating stress in your life.
Rumination. That's like this big thing that you fight against. Is you got to win the battle in your head first before you progress. But if you're having all these distractions, you're not helping yourself, and that's sending you on a rumination, or sitting and mulling the wrong things over and over and over. So on here, you say that the secret is to get back to nature. We find ourselves right now in this time of the pandemic, or whatever we want to call this, where we've done probably a lot more rumination because we're alone more than we were before.
That's right.
I don't know.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. And so how nice to hear maybe the secret that we could be applying that would help pull us out of this funk, this change, this thing that we are all having to learn how to deal with, this new status quo.
That's right. So, I'm sure for years you've heard the same thing. Oh, go take a walk, go take a hike. And I didn't know if it was really based in science. It was just like people think, it's like people tell you to do yoga. And you're like, okay, maybe it works for you, whatever. Well, there's actually science behind the impact of nature and how it impacts your creativity and your ability to think about the long-term parts of your business. So there was some research at a University of Houston a couple of years ago, and it was in the Journal of Marketing Research, and it was done by an assistant professor, Melanie Rudd. Here's what she did. She studies awe. And I'm not familiar really with awe, but imagine awe are these moments when you have all these different emotions that are coming together, and it creates this moment in time where everything kind of slows down and everything feels very clear and big. So awe, it could be something like when you see your child born. I'm sure there's this moment of awe. Or let's say if you're at the top of a huge mountain, or you're looking at the Grand Canyon, you have a moment of awe. So she studies awe, right? So here's what she did. Really cool study. She wanted to understand if having a moment of awe could increase people's ability to think strategically, desire to learn, and be creative. So here's what she did. She went out to the Alps and she recruited a whole bunch of different people. And she asked people to, at the bottom of the Alps, they're all inside of a room with no windows. And she said, hey, I want you to go ahead and select between you just picking up, we're about to do some work. So do you want to get some trail mix? And what she did was she had some trail mix was sitting in packages, and other amounts of trail mix you can make your own. So, right, you could be more creative if you made the ones, on your own, or you just pick whatever somebody already made for you, the manufacturer. So she found that she had those people on the bottom of the Alps. Most people chose the prepackaged trail mix. She then took people up in a gondola, and then at the top of the Alps, she then had this great moment of awe. She made sure everyone had this great moment of awe that she looked around, everyone's looking around, and then she had the same task. Do you guys want to create some trail mix, or do you want to buy or have this prepackaged trail mix? Different people, right? Mm-hmm. When there's a moment of awe in nature, people always or almost always chose to go make their own trail mix. Not only that, is when she asked them, do you want to learn more about what's going on up here in the Alps? More people were likely to say, yes, I want to learn more about this. So they're more open to education. They're more likely to be more creative and more open to long-term thinking. So nature in itself, the vastness and the power of nature, especially in a moment of awe, and how that makes you reflect on your part in a much broader world, gives you perspective on your life and your business that otherwise may be really difficult if you're in a confined space or you're digitally distracted. That's why I think nature is so important. And I felt this firsthand when I did my detox. And I'm not an environmentalist, guys. Like, I like city. So I didn't necessarily believe it until I actually did it. And once I did it, it was a structured process. I was like, yep, after about a day and a half, and I'll tell you how that worked out, I was kind of hooked. I was like, yeah, I get why nature matters as it relates to getting your thinking. And if you guys didn't know it, I don't know if you know this, Bill Gates, any study on Bill Gates has been doing this since he was just after he got married. But basically he does these detox where he goes out by himself into the woods, into a cabin. I'm sure there's lots of security around there. And he just reads, no electronics. And he does it for a week, but he called it something. But if you guys know Bill Gates, he's done it back in the days when he was CEO of Microsoft, and he just got away. Why? Because it forced him to not think about Microsoft. He was thinking 20, 30 years out. And so looking back on that, I'm like, if it worked for Bill Gates, maybe it could work for my little business too,
in my book, I talk about this. I went outside of town here to it's the place where they had the Flint quarries back in the day. But yeah. I remember at the top of a hill, when they finally kind of taught you what to look for, you could see all the quarries. They were covered up a little bit, but you could start to discern the quarries. But I made these connections on how that related with how we look at our business. And so as you're telling the story, I had that awe moment. I didn't know, but I talk about it in my book.
That is really cool. Yeah, I bet we've all had these awe moments, but just didn't use that moment to now say, okay, now that I'm in this awe moment, let me focus on my life. Let me focus on my business. So what I did was, here's what happened. So I worked with this guy named Steve August Coaching. He's worked with me for a couple of years, and he did this retreat. It's called Disconnect, Reconnect. So I fly out to Portland with other CEOs. It's a really small group of CEOs. And we fly out to Portland, and at the airport, he meets us. And we go and we change kind of because we're going to go right into the woods. We're not going to stop at anything. We're going to go out in the woods. He rented a house out in the woods, out near the Columbia Gorge, beautiful part of our country, out near Portland. And we get to the airport and we change. And then we get out to the car and he goes, okay, everybody, give me your phones. And everyone takes their phone and we drop it into a sealed container. And he says, okay, and of course, for an emergency, you can get it only for an emergency. But he basically gave us one cell phone number that he holds in case our family had to get a hold of us for some reason. Other than that, he's got it. He's got all of it. And we immediately went out to the woods and did a small hike. But just to see, we're all from different parts of the country, some from New York, Boston. I was kind of from the Dallas area. And getting out into nature and seeing waterfalls and getting up at the top of some of these mountains and looking down on the Columbia River Gorge and even just driving. But one thing we couldn't do is we couldn't talk about business. We were not, because we didn't know each other. So we're like, well, what do you do? He told us up front, we're at the car. He goes, you guys are going to be assigned new roles. Will, you're not a business owner at all. You're an author. then that's all you are. And you don't tell anybody else about what you do. Same thing with these other owners, which is really cool because you initially, especially when you're talking to other business people, you want to talk about your business, and then that gets you back into the narrow thinking. He's like, nope, we don't talk about business here at all. All we're going to do for the first 2 days is expand thinking, and nature does that. So over the course of the first 2 days, we did hikes, we did whitewater rafting. At nighttime, we would sit outside in this beautiful house and look at the night sky. And he had a journal for us to reflect on things like, basically looking back, I didn't realize at the time, looking back, the questions were basically trying to show me that I'm just a small part of a much bigger universe. And if I think about that and some of the things I want to do with my life, not my business, my life, and making me journal on some of these things and answer some of these questions, it kind of just after about, I'm not kidding you. At first it was a little bit nerve-wracking. When you give up your phone, man, that's hard. It's when you don't know what's going on with your business or whatever, it's hard. By about 12 hours in, so that night, I actually felt a calmness. At first, everyone's really didn't like it very much. Calmness came, and after 2 days, I was sitting drinking coffee, on this beautiful deck for like an hour without ever even thinking about work. And that's hard. Who does that? You know how it is. That's hard as a business owner. And it was a great, great moment of disconnecting. Then what we did was on day 3 and 4, we went to reconnect. So we did some activities as groups and other things, but basically the idea would be focus now. And now that you've seen the expansiveness and you've brainstormed ideas about your life and your business, what could be. And that's when I started thinking about Mindstate as a company. Back then, it was a book. It was a book that would feed money into Trigger Point, my research company. All of a sudden, because I thought, no, Mindstate's a bigger idea. It's not a book that brings people into Trigger Point. It is an idea around small businesses and growing small businesses using the power of behavioral science that the big guys get to use and not the small guys. And I was a small guy thinking this is not right. That thinking, I don't know how broad I would have been because I was always focused on Trigger Point and driving that company, not even think about the possibilities of building a brand new company called Mindstate Group, which is now my passion. So we spent the last 2 days focused on how do you take this vision or creating a vision for Mindstate Group, which I turned into, this kind of whole new training company and consulting company. But then, okay, then what are you going to have to do to go kind of make that real? And, we didn't get into brass tacks because that's real focused day-to-day stuff, but just understanding where do you want Mindstate Group to be 5 years from now? How many small businesses do you want to touch? How do you want to help them? Some of those big, broad questions were being forced to think about. And how does that integrate into the person I want to be? The father, the husband, spiritual, that kind of stuff. And so it was a forced way of reconnecting. And then we all got back to the airport. We all jumped back in the car, 4 days, got back to the airport. And all of a sudden the box gets opened. We pick up our phones, we turn them on. And we're like, and you know what? I mean, honestly, I had about 1,000 emails, but looking back, very few of them really meant anything. That's a whole other thing about it, right? So I would have had 1,000 emails that I at least looked at and deleted or filed. And all of a sudden, almost 1,000 emails had come to me in the last 4 days. And I remember thinking, none of them really mattered. Very few of them really mattered. Like 17 or 18 of them really mattered. The rest of them were just distractions, man. Things that I was supposed to read, but the world kept going. The company did fine. They didn't need me for 4 days. That's what I think I got out of it. And it changed my life. The best decision I've ever made. I mean, I met you because of Mindstate Group. I've met in great small businesses. I've helped small businesses. I'm teaching at Texas A&M. Why? Mindstate Group. I mean, that's really why it was. And it was that one digital detox.
So was sitting there, do you remember that moment where Mindstate Group became really clear? I'm hearing an echo.
Oh, I'm not.
Something changed.
Oh,
anyway,
no.
there was this moment where all of a sudden this clarity came to you, and you got this big burst of energy from it. Do you remember that moment? Yeah,
I can't tell you the question, but I was around a table with these other CEOs, and we were going around the table talking about there's an activity that we're using trying to figure out some of our biggest blockages, mental blockages. And for me, we did an activity where I got around this moment of, I oftentimes put myself into a box like, you're not smart enough to do that, Will. Or I used to say this, I was never supposed to be where I was today. I used to say that all the time. I was never supposed to be here today. Because, I mean, I grew up kind of, not very smart, part of the country that, didn't have a lot of wealth. And I remember him stopping me and he said, he goes, you deserve being here. And he wrote something on a sheet of paper. He's like, you always table yourself and say, you're not supposed to be here, which limits my thinking. It's through God's blessing that I'm here. I wasn't supposed to be here. I'm not smart enough to be here. And I remember it was after that moment that we said, okay, let's assume that you were put on this earth because you understand these mind states better than anybody. This is why you belong here. And I think it was something, a kind of a weird shift on that in that moment of me writing that out, basically. And he said, stop saying I was never supposed to be here. You were always supposed to be here. And then I think from there, it was only like an hour later that we started thinking about, well, where's your passion? It's more on mind state. And it grew from there of all the possibilities it could have been. But it grew in that moment. I think it was where he stopped me right in mid-sentence. I was introducing the company. He goes, I said, I was never supposed to be here. He goes, stop. Because he'd heard me say that for a long time. Yeah. He's like, I got to have you stop saying that. So he made me write it down. Good guy.
You're always so open and honest on this. It's funny. It's true. I mean, we all do the same things, but we get to hear you say it, and then we go, yeah, I do stuff like that. So step one.
Yes. So if you want to keep the digital detox, and the problem with doing a detox, whatever detox you do, I'm sure some people out there do these health detoxes too. The problem is maintaining it. So I had this great moment of clarity. And I walked away from there going, you know what, man, I'm looking at the phone too much. And I'm being distracted too much, I think. But I really focused on the phone and social media and kind of even TV to a certain extent. So I wanted to bring that to my house. I was like, I want to make this kind of a weekly thing. I want to make sure that I'm got this clarity. And so, well, how do you do that? Well, you know how it is. You first, in everything you learn from marketing and mind states, right, is you have to identify if you want to drive behavior. And I knew I wanted to drive my own behavior. You got to identify first goals. So I put out one simple goal. I said, I want to, at 8:00 at night, turn off all email and the phone. Like I was going to stop business. If I was going to read about business, maybe that's okay. I was going to stop. So that was my functional goal. And you know me, like functional goals are great, but you got to get to the aspirations. Like, why is that important? So I was ladder. Like, well, why is it important for you to turn off your phone at 8:00? And so I did my little thinking that I always do in the book. I have the activities in the book. And I forced myself to, why is that important? I laddered it up twice. And in that, I came up to the concept of the reason why it's important for me to shut off everything at 8:00 was that I have this aspirational goal of being present in the moment. Because when I was in nature, I'd never seen this part of the country. It's beautiful. And I remember Steve would focus us to be in the moment. And like, don't think, just look at that waterfall. Like, look at that waterfall. Like that thing is that took millions of years for that thing to see, millions of years. And you're here for like 14, 15 minutes. So I remember being in the moment. I thought that was a great moment. That's a great feeling. And that's something when you're distracted, you're rarely in the moment, right? How many times, my son will come up in the morning, I'm looking at emails and he's trying to talk to me and I'm like, oh, hold on a second. And then all of a sudden 10 minutes go by and he's already walked away. Why? He's not waiting for his dad. He knows that email is more important than him at that moment. So he walks away. I didn't want that to happen. My son goes to bed around 8:00. So I figured when he goes to bed, that gives my wife and I this moment of kind of, we can be in the moment together because I work all day. She does her thing. So it's hard for us to kind of be together. So that was my higher order goal. So you have to figure out your higher order goal because it's okay to say, yeah, my function goal is turn off my phone at 8, but at 8:05, if you get kind of antsy, I'm just going to phone for a quick minute. I went to the aspirational goal and I wrote that down just like I tell you to do in the book for your business. I do it for myself. What's my aspirational goal? I want to be connected. The second thing you do after that is, well, yeah, you can have a goal, but you better marry that goal up with what drives you. And that's motivations. That's the second part of our model, right? So there are these 9 motivations. And I said, okay, what's the real reason why I want to be in the moment? And I think a lot of people, and I thought at first it'd be like, one of the motivations is nurturance, the desire for love. That certainly plays into it. Another one is belonging, the desire for connectiveness. And I thought, yeah, there's something there too. Actually, what I think after I looked at all is I said to this, there's this other motivation called engagement. And engagement, I got it here, is to feel captivated, excited, and absorbed in an activity, fully absorbed. And when I looked at that, I said, you know what? Here's, I think, why I want 8:00 and for her and I to connect. It's about being fully absorbed in the moment and release. So I'm like you, right? I work all day long in my business. I have to be the smartest person in the room because it's my business. So all day long, I'm thinking. I'm trying to be the smartest person on every call because I'm trying to navigate this world of change. And at the end of the day, I'm gassed. Most days I'm gassed, right? It's 6:30 and I'm eating and I'm in this kind of haze where my wife is talking to me about Nicholas's grades. I'm doing my best. But I said, you know what I really need is the reason why I have to be in that moment is it pushes me to a moment of release where I can get rid of all that stuff of the day. It's gone. That day's gone. I don't need to think about it. Tomorrow morning, I'll wake up and I'll go deal with stuff in the morning on the business. But this fully engrossed in the moment so that I can, be present in that moment, in this moment of relaxation, that does good things for me spiritually, for my family, for my marriage. Like it was so much better to lower my stress. And I said, that's the motivation behind it. The motivation for me turning off this stuff is that I can lower my stress, even if that's 2 hours, because we go to bed around 10:30. So even if it's just 2.5 hours, that would be enough for me to reset myself for the next day.
What do you mean by create points of friction versus willpower?
Yeah. So here's the thing, guys. You know it. Willpower is very difficult to maintain, a behavior, and so if, a lot of us say, I'm going to go to the gym, I have all this willpower, and willpower fades. We all know that. So rather than trying to force yourself to, get your willpower up every day and just fight through it all, why don't you create friction? So it's really funny because in business, we're always focused on take friction out of the system, because you're trying to make a behavior more available, right? Easier. But if you want to stop a behavior, in this case, checking emails at 8 o'clock, writing emails at 9 o'clock, still maintaining business, use friction to your advantage. So here's what I did. Here's my 4 steps. So basically what I first did, remember, is I figured out what are my goals, my functional goals, turn the phone off, turn off all my business stuff, all my apps at 8 o'clock. And then I knew that I wanted to do it because I needed a moment of release and engagement. It was my motivation, my desire for captivation. Then I created friction. First thing I did is I said, okay, so if I'm going to actually do this, I've got to make it difficult. I don't want to use willpower. I want to make it difficult for me to use my phone during night. So here's what I did. At 7:45, I create an alarm. It's still on my phone today. At 7:45, an alarm goes off at night, 7:45. And it basically signals to me that I have 15 minutes to do any last minute business things I need to do. Text staff, see how everybody's doing, whatever. At 8 o'clock, another alarm goes off and I take my phone, step 2, and it automatically takes off notifications off of everything. So I don't get notified of anything after 8 o'clock at night. I then take my phone, I walk it into the bedroom. It's all habit now. And I put it on the charger. So we watch TV or we kind of, interact, of course, in the living room. And so I put the phone away from me, right? I made friction, placed it on the charger. And then I wrote a card. I have an index card that I wrote basically the phrases of will. Your moment is to release is now. It better be important, basically, is what I have on this card. And I put it on top of my phone. So here's the point, right? Right now, I have it to where if I really need to get my phone, I can, right? And is this 100% effective? No, of course not. There's times every week I'm like, I gotta see if this proposal came in, right? But that's okay. But at least I put friction into the process where it forces me to get up, walk into the bedroom, take a card that I wrote to myself that tells me, is it really worth it? You have this vision, you have this motivation. Is it worth it? Then I have to remove that card. I then have to basically reset to where I can get my notifications, get back on Wi-Fi. There's a lot of friction in there. So I don't know if you do this, but previous to that, if I'm watching TV, my phone's next to me. When the TV goes to commercial, I grab my phone, check out social media, check out the emails really quickly. Then you turn it off and you put it down. Now, because there's no friction in the process, now I have to walk all the way into the bedroom to do that. By the time I got out, I would already be kind of done, right? The commercial would be over. That's what I mean by creating friction. Don't rely on willpower unless you are hardcore. And there's not many people that are. You can do it by just sheer willpower, eat healthy, whatever, exercise. I wanted to create friction points. And by doing friction points, it just forces me to be more consistent with my actions.
Well, that's what we call Will Leach power.
Willpower. Yeah, that's right. I like that. That's good. Nice touch.
So I love that. This ritual way of disconnecting that empowers you to turn off. And going and doing these things, being present, actually gives you more creative power later when you need it.
That's right. That's right.
Will, I wanted to add a little thing into our weekly conversation. There are certain quotes in your book that I really like. So I thought maybe we would review one of those. How do you feel about that?
Depends if I remember the quote, but yeah, let's do it.
So when we're talking about these efforts in here,
Yep.
So this regulatory fit theory,
Yep.
Here's the quote I have underlined. It creates a communications roadmap to drive behavior change, not only because it feels natural, but also becomes the brand feels more relatable. Consumers will feel that the brand gets them. And so this detoxing is a way to actually implement a version of that.
Yeah, I can see that. I could totally see that. I mean, if you think about that friction, that is the almost the opposite of what I just said in the book. It's using regulatory fit, but rather than creating salience for your brand and making things feel natural, behavior feel natural, what I did was I created friction to where my natural inclination, which was to look at that phone whenever I had a chance, it forced me to go against my natural inclination. So yeah, I'm just using the same behavioral sciences that I talk about to market to better engage with your customers. You can use them for your own behaviors. It's funny because I've been telling people this lately. It's really a human behavior model, even before it's a marketing model. It's just using science in the realm of creating better marketing and better business practices.
So in these in your class right now, you're teaching a class, and then you have you're launching 3 new Mindstate marketing programs for small businesses where we learn some of the things that you're talking about right here. Maybe you're not going to detox in this particular class, but you're going to apply some of these principles and processes to help you do a better job with your communication.
That's very much it. We just launched them, and there's different levels of kind of interaction. There's first the starter pack, which is you get access to the book and the workbook and all the things that you need to do to get it started immediately. And you can buy that in only the digital version, or I'll mail you a copy that's been autographed. And then the second one's just more of our most popular business right now, which is the master class, which is a video-based class which teaches you all the concepts in the Mindstate to marketing process and shows you step by step how we built a brand from the ground up using this process. You can see how we did it and how we basically launched a brand using Mindstate marketing. But then the last program is for people like, yeah, that's cool that you taught me about your company, but I want to bring it to my company and I want you to be there with me. And that's our partnership program, where you get access to the master class, hours worth of video-based content, but also you get to work with me live for a day to make sure that we're applying these principles specific to your company. And every month afterwards, we meet together so that we can make sure that you're applying these concepts for greater return on your investments. And ultimately, this idea of getting customers to listen to your messaging, care about your messaging, and act on your messaging.
So tell us about your latest column that came out in Forbes.
Yes. So there's this concept, of course, that 2020 was a tough one, guys. It was. And we only expect that 2021 is going to be volatile as well. You have to assume that it's going to be. We haven't really come out of our economic crisis yet. There's still people that have biological threats to them. We've seen a large loss of life. So what I want to do for Forbes was saying, okay, how can we shift our focus away from just thinking about how do we survive 2021, shift it to how do we thrive in 2021? So I go through a series of activities using goal theory, part 1 of my book, right? Of using goal theory to really help you understand the goals and how to create these goals for your business, but then how to adjust as these changes start coming at you, how to adjust so you're not just surviving 2021, but hopefully you're going to thrive in 2021. So it's just a mental activity, a mental exercise I give you in Forbes, but something that I think is going to be really helpful to get your mind right, to really trying to grow your business in 2021.
Well, this has been another excellent conversation on the Mindstate Marketing Hour. So, Will, tell us a little bit about your class and what's going on over there, although people can't go and sign up necessarily unless they're a student, but we'd like to know what's going on.
That's right. So I teach a course at Texas A&M University, whoop, Aggies, at the Human Behavior Lab. And we're giving applied behavioral economics certifications to professionals. Though you don't have to be a professional. We have 2 MBA students actually that are in there. They're students from all over the world who want to become stronger at behavioral marketing, behavioral economics. How do you do stronger A/B testing? So it's basically a 1.5-year program. It's on your time, video-based learning. But right now, I am working on behavioral marketing, and I'm working with people from all over the country, different size brands. I got one guy who's a fire eater. He's a street performer in Toronto. He's amazing. I've seen him on YouTube all over the place. And I've got like agencies that are really taking the class. I've got people from Maker's Mark that are taking the class. Anyways, it's a great video-based instruction every semester. You can take multiple classes. I'm just doing behavioral marketing. We have behavioral sales next semester. Whole bunch of introduction to behavioral economics, et cetera. So you take the course and you walk out being certified in applied behavioral economics. And what makes it different than any other course out there, guys, is that we are all business owners. We're all trying to go through this together. So it's not a bunch of academics that are teaching these courses. These are business people who have lived the world of business, and they have lived behavioral sciences and behavioral psychology and applying it to their own businesses. So it's very practical. Any class you take from Texas A&M University is going to be very practical. So go check it out at the Human Behavioral Lab, and you can sign up for next semester, which is our summer semester.
And then tell us, you've got a new version of your book that's coming out as well. So when should we expect that? Where do we go sign up to be notified?
I do. So we have a new version of Marketing Mindstates. The book was written in 2018, the end of 2018. Well, a lot has changed since 2018. So we're doing a updated edition of the book. It's already been written. It's now going through the process of editing, things like that. We should get that book out in about 6 weeks is the last thing I've heard. New cover, which is going to be really cool. It's going to feel new. It's got some refresh information in there, but the same old great sciences that are in the first book are going to be in the second book. So 6 weeks from now, that will be out there. And on the website, hopefully soon, you will have the ability to go to the website, mindstategroup.com, sign up to get some notifications, sign up for my blog. I have videos that go out every week. I have a blog that goes out every week. And in those, of course, I'll let you know when the book is out and tell you whether or not, you should go ahead and invest in the book or maybe even just kind of do something with me personally to help you take the new information and apply it to your business. That may be another program that we offer.
All right. What an excellent how to expand your creativity and strategic thinking with digital detoxing. Take some time, reconnect, maybe even take Will's book with you as you're sitting and looking at the stars and pondering what you should do. You should maybe consider how to use science to connect better with your clients. Will, have a great weekend.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week on the Mindstate Marketing Hour.
Can't wait. Thank you very much, Steve. Take care, guys.
All right. And that's a wrap.